This is another podcast from Alpha Business Media. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Here we take your sources, could be articles, research papers, maybe even your own notes, and we really pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge or insight. Think of it as your shortcut to being well-informed. We aim for surprising facts, maybe just enough humor to keep you hooked. Today we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating, pretty challenging, transformation of Kathmandu. We'll be unpacking a study that looks at how innovative solutions might, just might, turn the chaos of Nepal's capital into a vibrant, smart city. It's a real journey, from ancient temples to 21st century tech, and we're here to guide you through what truly matters in this material. Okay, let's unpack this. So Kathmandu, anyone who's visited or even just seen pictures knows it's this city of incredible contrast. You've got these ancient UNESCO World Heritage Sites just steeped in spiritual serenity right next to, chaotic urban sprawl. The quiet you might expect from the Himalayan foothills often gets drowned out by just sheer traffic noise. Now, our sources describe this as more than just an inconvenience. It's a systemic crisis. But what's really interesting and what the study highlights is that this very chaos, these deep problems, actually present a unique opportunity. An opportunity for what they call a technological generational leap. Instead of small upgrades, maybe Kathmandu can jump straight to, 21st century integrated solutions.
Yeah, that juxtaposition is exactly what makes it so compelling. And the source material really digs into Kathmandu's pain points. And fundamentally, they all seem to stem from one root cause, this explosive and frankly largely unregulated growth. The population in the Kathmandu Valley, when you count temporary migrants too, it's ballooned to somewhere between 4 and 5 million people. The infrastructure that's there, it just wasn't built for that, not even close. It's pushed the city to the brink, creating what we can really see as a triad of interconnected crises.
A triad. Okay, so what are the three main parts of that?
Well, first you have the transport collapse. The streets are just gridlocked. There's been this rapid growth of private vehicles, motorcycles, scooters especially, combined with, a pretty inefficient public transport system. Add in narrow roads, poor traffic management, and, let's be honest, widespread traffic rule violations. It just makes everything worse.
Right. Chaos.
Exactly. The result is these hours-long traffic jams, catastrophic air pollution. Kathmandu regularly ends up on lists of the world's dirtiest cities, and huge economic losses because people just can't get around.
Okay, so transport's number one. What's next?
Then there's the garbage crisis. The Kathmandu Valley produces something like 1,200 metric tons of municipal solid waste every single day.
Wow, 1,200 tons. Where does it all go?
Mostly to overflowing landfills, places like Seidel and Bancher Donda. They're past capacity. And past attempts at getting households to sort waste, they kind of failed because of inconsistency.
Yeah.
People would sort it, then it would all get dumped together anyway. That really eroded public trust.
Yeah, I can see how that would.
So now you get these spontaneous dumps popping up on streets, river banks. It's a serious public health risk, terrible for the environment.
Okay, transport, garbage.
Yeah.
What is the third part of the triad?
The third is this strange energy paradox. Nepal, theoretically, has incredible hydropower potential. We're talking estimates around 83,000 megawatts. Huge.
83,000. That sounds like a lot.
It is. But for decades, the reality has been severe energy shortages. The actual installed capacity was only about 1 gigawatt for a long time, and most of that came from what they call run-of-the-river hydro plants. Unlike dams that store water, these depend directly on the river's current flow.
So when the rivers run low.
Exactly. Sharp drops in output during the dry season, typically December to April. This led to rolling blackouts, they call it load shedding, sometimes up to 5 hours a day.
5 hours without power? Daily.
Yeah. It cripples industry, forces businesses onto expensive, polluting diesel generators, and just makes daily life incredibly difficult for everyone.
That paints a really grim picture. I mean, you can almost visualize the traffic jams, smell the garbage, feel those blackouts. But are these just, separate headaches, or do the sources suggest they actually feed into each other, making the whole situation worse?
That's a really important question. And the core insight, the big takeaway from the sources, is that no, they're absolutely not isolated. They're deeply intertwined. They form this vicious circle where trying to fix one problem in isolation without looking at the whole system, it's pretty much doomed to fail.
A vicious circle, right?
Yeah.
Can you break that down? How do they connect?
Okay, so take transport chaos. It directly impacts energy. All those chronic traffic jams mean a huge overconsumption of imported fuel, petrol, diesel. That's a massive drain on Nepal's economy, and it actively undermines any hope of energy independence. Millions of liters just wasted sitting in traffic.
Okay, so bad traffic wastes fuel, hurting energy independence. How does it work the other way?
Well, the energy deficit then slows down transport development. If you have an unstable power supply, it's basically impossible to scale up really crucial solutions like electric public transport, electric buses, trolley buses, or even to build out a reliable network of charging stations for electric vehicles. Even modern intelligent traffic management systems, the ones that could help ease the jams, they need constant power. They become vulnerable during blackouts.
Gotcha. So bad power hinders better transport. And how does garbage fit in?
Right. The garbage crisis makes both the energy and the environmental crises worse. Those mountains of organic waste rotting in landfills, they're not just polluting, they're a huge missed opportunity. There are technologies called waste to energy, or WTE. They could actually turn that waste into a resource. Experts point out that Kathmandu Valley's waste that's got over 60% organic content is actually ideal for WTE. It could potentially contribute significantly to the country's energy grid while tackling the landfill problem at the same time.
So the trash could actually become power.
Exactly. So stepping back, what this all means is that any strategy for transforming Kathmandu has to be holistic. It needs to be integrated. You can't realistically build smart transport if you don't fix the energy problem first. And you can't really talk about energy sustainability if you ignore the potential energy sitting in those garbage dumps. The solutions have got to be as interconnected as the problems themselves.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so given these deep interconnected issues, how is the Nepali government actually envisioning the path forward? What's their official smart city concept supposed to look like?
Well, the official vision, it's ambitious, no doubt, but it does lay some groundwork for a smart Kathmandu. There are really two key documents shaping the state's approach. First, there's the Digital Nepal Framework, the DNF. That was launched back in 2019. It's kind of the government's big flagship initiative for digital transformation. It covers 8 sectors, and one of those is urban infrastructure. The aim is to use, disruptive technologies to improve basic urban services, water, waste, public transport, traffic management.
Okay, the DNF. What's the second piece?
The second is a set of smart city indicators. The government approved 83 specific indicators pretty recently. These are meant to assess how smart cities are becoming. They're grouped under 4 main pillars: smart citizens, smart economy, smart governance, and smart infrastructure. And cities will get classified on a 5-tier scale based on these indicators. So it introduces some measurement, some accountability.
That sounds like a solid framework on paper. 33 indicators, different pillars. But, we've all seen grand government plans that don't quite translate into reality. Are the sources giving us any sense of the actual tangible progress? Or is this still mostly aspirational talk, especially given Nepal's history with some initiatives?
Yeah, that's the crux of it. Unfortunately, there seems to be a pretty significant gap between that grand vision and what's actually happening on the ground. The sources explicitly note that progress towards the DNF targets, especially in that urban infrastructure sector, has been, quote, unsatisfactory.
Unsatisfactory.
And the whole smart city slogan, well, it's apparently often been used more for, populist purposes without clear, concrete plans attached. This has understandably created some public skepticism, which is only reinforced by past failures, like that waste sorting program we talked about where trust was broken.
Right. So people hear smart city and think, heard that before.
Pretty much. And the existence of these official frameworks, like the DNF, it's kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, it is a huge opportunity. These documents give legitimacy to innovative projects. They help city authorities, investors, international partners kind of align their efforts, makes it easier to get funding. It's like having official permission to innovate.
Okay, that's the upside. What's the downside?
The downside is it's a potential trap. Nepal's history, sadly, is littered with initiatives that were hyped up but never really implemented properly. So if these smart city projects are rolled out opaquely, without real citizen participation, or if they don't deliver tangible, visible results quickly, they risk just becoming another layer of bureaucracy. And that would just further undermine public trust, making future efforts even harder.
So it could backfire if not handled right.
Precisely. What's absolutely crucial here, according to the sources, is how this framework gets used. It shouldn't be some rigid top-down command structure. Instead, it needs to be a flexible platform that supports local, genuinely people-centered solutions. That smart citizens pillar they mention. It needs to be the foundation, not an afterthought. Every single tech solution, whether it's traffic lights or waste bins, should first be judged on. Does this bring real, visible, immediate benefits to people's daily lives? That's really the only way to cut through the skepticism and get residents to be active participants, not just passive recipients.
That's such a critical point, putting people, the citizens, right at the center.
Yeah.
Okay, we've laid out the problems, the triad of crises, and the government's broad vision, with its potential pitfalls. Now let's get practical. What specific innovative solutions are the sources actually proposing to tackle, say, those chaotic streets and nightmare commutes? This is where it gets really interesting, right?
Absolutely. Kathmandu's traffic nightmare, it doesn't just need wider roads. It needs a fundamentally smarter way of managing mobility. Smart solutions can potentially transform those streets from sources of daily stress into efficient arteries. And the focus is really on efficiency, not just pouring more concrete.
So less about brute force, more about brains.
Exactly. And the brain of such a system would be an intelligent traffic management system, or ITMS. Think of it as a digital control center coordinating traffic flows across the city in real time. It works in three parts: data collection using sensors, cameras, GPS data from phones and vehicles. Then data analysis using AI to predict traffic patterns, spot congestion forming, and make optimal decisions. And finally, management and information dynamically adjusting traffic light timings, maybe redirecting traffic and feeding real-time info about jams or accidents out to drivers and public transport systems.
So instead of police officers trying to manually direct traffic at busy intersections.
Right, which is still common in Kathmandu and often ineffective against overwhelming volume. And ITMS adapts instantly to actual conditions. The sources suggest this isn't just about smoother flow. It could potentially cut average commute times by as much as 30%. Think about what that means, liberating hours every day for potentially millions of people.
30%, that's huge. But ITMS manages the flow. What about the actual modes of transport to get people out of private cars and bikes?
Good point. Beyond ITMS, to really transform transport, Kathmandu needs a major rethink of its public transport. The core reason for the current mess is that mass shift away from public transport towards private vehicles. To reverse that tide, public transport simply has to become a better option, faster, more reliable, more convenient than driving yourself.
Easier said than done, though.
True, but there are proven solutions. One of the most efficient and cost-effective, especially compared to building a subway system, is implementing bus rapid transit, or BRT corridors.
BRT, I've heard of that. How does it work?
It uses the existing road network but gives buses a serious advantage. Think dedicated lanes, physically separated from general traffic wherever possible, so buses aren't stuck in the same jams. The gold standard example is Curitiba in Brazil. They pioneered things like dedicated lanes, but also these enclosed tube-like stations, pipe stations where you pay before the bus arrives, and board at platform level. This cuts down stop times to just seconds.
Like a subway station, but for buses.
Exactly. And Curitiba built an integrated network, different types of buses serving different routes, all connected, allowing you to travel across the city on a single ticket. It's affordable, reliable, and it's a time-tested recipe that could definitely be adapted for Kathmandu's context. Even closer to home, Thimphu in Bhutan, which faces some similar geographical challenges, is developing a priority bus corridor, so it's regionally relevant too.
Okay, BRT sounds promising. What else?
Well, to make public transport truly competitive, it needs to be incredibly convenient to use. That's where something called mobility as a service, or MaaS, comes in. Yeah, mobility as a service. Imagine a single digital platform, probably a mobile app, that brings together all the available transport options. City buses, existing ride-sharing services like Pathio and InDriver, which are popular there, taxis, maybe future bike or scooter rentals. The app lets you plan the optimal route using any combination of these, see exact arrival times, book your ride, and pay online all in one place. It turns a fragmented mess of services into one seamless, predictable option. That's how you start competing seriously with the convenience of a private car or motorbike.
That sounds incredibly useful. It integrates everything.
And beyond the convenience, there's a deeper impact. Implementing smart, efficient public transport like BRT and MaaS is more than just moving people efficiently. It's a powerful tool for economic equality and social justice. Think about it. Today's traffic chaos, it disproportionately hurts the poor, people living on the outskirts who might spend hours commuting. Affordable, reliable, fast public transport breaks down those barriers. It gives residents from remote or poorer areas much better. Equal access to jobs, education, healthcare in the city center. So it's really an investment not just in infrastructure, but in human capital, in opportunity, in boosting the whole city's economic activity.
That's a really powerful point about social justice, making the city accessible for everyone. Now, you mentioned the mountains of garbage earlier. That sounds like a huge, intractable problem. How do you even begin to turn a crisis like that into, well, something manageable, maybe even a resource? What can tech do there?
Yeah. The waste crisis in Kathmandu, it definitely requires more than just finding new places to dump things. It needs a fundamental shift towards a smart system, one that actually views waste not just as trash, but as a potential resource. And technology can play a huge role in building a much more efficient chain, right from collection through to recycling and disposal. This is how you actually move towards a circular economy model.
Okay, so where does that chain start? With collection.
Exactly. The foundation of any clean city is reliable, efficient collection. And remember that broken trust issue from past sorting failures? The first step has to be building a completely reliable, transparent system. So the sources propose using smart containers. These bins would have ultrasonic sensors inside that monitor how full they are in real time.
Sensors in the bins.
Ma-
Seriously.
Yeah. That data gets transmitted constantly to a central control room, so garbage trucks are dispatched only to containers that are actually full or nearing full. This stops bins from overflowing, which is a common sight now, and it also saves a huge amount of fuel and time as trucks aren't driving around checking half-empty bins. You pair that with route optimization software, using GPS trackers on the trucks to calculate the most efficient collection routes each day based on which bins need emptying.
That sounds much smarter than just driving the same route every day.
Definitely. And there are great examples. Indore in India is often cited as this phenomenal success story. They went from being quite polluted to consistently ranked as India's cleanest city. How? Through things like 100% door-to-door collection with mandatory segregation at source, GPS tracking of all collection vehicles, plus continuous public awareness campaigns. It shows tech works best when it's backed by political will, strict monitoring, and getting citizens on board. Trust is key.
Okay, smart collection gets the waste off the streets efficiently. But you still have 1,200 tons a day. What happens next? Landfills aren't the answer, you said.
Right. Just burying it is a dead end, literally. The innovative solution, the one that ties into the energy issue we discussed, is waste to energy, or WTE.
Waste to energy, turning trash into power.
Essentially, yes. Modern WTE plants take the unsorted or non-recyclable waste and burn it at very high temperatures. The heat generated is then used to create steam, which drives turbines to produce electricity. This has a fantastic dual benefit for a city like Kathmandu. First, it dramatically reduces the sheer volume of waste needing landfill space, often by 80 to 90%.
80 to 90% reduction. Wow.
Yeah, it massively extends the life of existing landfills or reduces the need for new ones. And second, it generates electricity, which, as we know, is desperately needed. And remember that high organic content in Kathmandu's waste, over 60%. That makes it particularly suitable for WTE, potentially also including processes like anaerobic digestion, which produces biogas that can be burned for energy or even upgraded for cooking fuel. It's not just a theoretical benefit. Experts cited in the sources estimate that Kathmandu's garbage could potentially meet close to 10% of the valley's energy needs if properly harnessed through WTE.
10% from garbage.
Right.
That's significant. What are the hurdles? It sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, there are definitely obstacles. WTE plants require significant upfront investment. That's a major one. You also need consistent waste streams and ideally some level of sorting to remove hazardous materials, plus clear government policies and regulations to support the whole process.
So money and policy.
Right. But global experience shows these can be overcome. There are successful WTE plants operating efficiently for years in many Southeast Asian countries, Thailand, Singapore, even Sri Lanka. Often these projects get support from international institutions like the Asian Development Bank, which helps with the financing piece.
Okay, so it's feasible, just needs investment and structure.
And what's really interesting is how this approach completely flips the economic model of waste management. Right now for Kathmandu, waste disposal is just a big, expensive line item in the city budget. A smart, integrated approach can actually transform it from a cost center into potentially a profit center.
How so?
Well, first, those smart logistics we talked about, optimized routes, sensors, they dramatically reduce the operating costs of collection. But more importantly, you create new revenue streams. Sorted recyclables, plastics, metals, paper can be sold. Compost made from the organic waste can be sold to farmers. And crucially, the electricity generated at the WTE plant can be sold to the national grid. This potential for revenue makes the whole sector much more attractive to private investors and for setting up public-private partnerships or PPPs. And those PPPs are probably essential for overcoming that high initial investment hurdle.
It's fascinating to think of the garbage truck driver eventually contributing to the power grid. It really drives home that interconnectedness you mentioned. Which brings us neatly back to energy. We talked about Nepal's huge hydropower potential, but also the reality of outages and reliance on imports. How can the country move beyond those seasonal issues and build a truly resilient, modern smart energy system.
Yeah, Nepal's energy sector is definitely at a crossroads. Moving away from that old model, the seasonal fluctuations, the dependence on imports towards a more diversified, reliable, and smart system is absolutely crucial. It's not just about comfort for citizens, it's fundamental for sustainable economic growth.
So where do you start? What are the key steps?
Well, one of the fastest, most visible, and most effective steps, a real quick win, according to the sources, is a complete overhaul of the street lighting system, switching everything over to modern LED technology.
Just changing light bulbs. How big a difference can that make?
A surprisingly big difference. LED lights consume something like 40 to 60% less electricity than the older traditional lamps, like sodium vapor or mercury vapor.
40 to 60% less energy, just from streetlights.
Yes. Across a whole city, that translates into huge savings on the electricity bill for the municipality. Plus, LED lamps last much longer, at least 4 times longer, so you get massive savings on maintenance costs too, fewer crews out changing bulbs. And there are other benefits. Good quality, bright LED lighting has been shown to significantly increase public safety. Studies show reductions in crime rates, sometimes up to 20%, and also fewer nighttime road accidents, maybe up to 35% reduction.
Okay, lower costs, less maintenance, safer streets. Sounds great. But isn't switching thousands of streetlights expensive up front?
It is. The initial cost is significant. But there are clever financing models, things like energy service companies or ESCOs, or public-private partnerships again. Basically, a private company comes in, pays for the entire upgrade, installs all the new LED lights, and then they get paid back over time through a share of the energy savings achieved. So the project essentially pays for itself without needing a huge upfront chunk from the city budget.
The savings pay for the upgrade. Clever. Okay, so LEDs are a quick win. What's the deeper, more strategic fix for the grid itself?
Right. LEDs help reduce demand, but the bigger challenge is modernizing the electrical grid itself. Nepal's current grid, like in many developing areas, suffers from high losses, both technical losses in transmission and distribution, and commercial losses, like electricity theft or metering issues. Plus, it's unstable. The solution here is moving towards smart power grids, or smart grids.
Smart grids. We hear that term a lot. What does it actually mean in practice?
A smart grid isn't just about the wires, it's about adding a layer of digital technology and communication. It enables two-way communication between the utility and its customers and allows for real-time monitoring, analysis, and control of the electricity flow. It's basically making the grid intelligent.
Okay, intelligence. What benefits does that bring?
Several key ones. First, it helps reduce those losses significantly. Some estimates for developing countries put potential loss reduction as high as 30%. The grid can instantly detect faults, power theft, or inefficiencies and optimize the load. Second, it dramatically increases reliability. If there's damage, say from a storm, a smart grid can automatically identify and isolate the damaged section, rerouting power around it to minimize the number of people affected and the duration of the outage.
So fewer and shorter blackouts. That sounds good.
Exactly. But perhaps most importantly for Nepal, a smart grid is absolutely essential for effectively integrating renewable energy sources. Nepal has huge solar energy potential, right? Around 300 sunny days a year. But solar power, just like run-of-the-river hydro, is intermittent. It fluctuates depending on cloud cover, time of day.
Right, the sun doesn't shine at night.
Precisely. A traditional grid struggles to handle large amounts of this variable generation. A smart grid, however, is designed to manage these fluctuations. It can balance supply and demand in real time, integrate thousands of distributed energy sources, from large solar farms down to rooftop solar panels on homes, and make the whole system much more flexible and resilient. There are successful pilot projects showing this works. In India, cities like Surat and Gift City have implemented smart grid elements. Brazil has projects like in Buzios. They've demonstrated reductions in losses and better management of renewables.
So a smart grid is key to unlocking that renewable potential reliably.
Absolutely. And zooming out even further, what this really implies and what the sources emphasize is that building a smart, diversified energy system isn't just an economic or environmental issue for Nepal. It's actually a matter of national security.
National security? How so?
Well, think about it. Over-reliance on a single type of generation, like that run-of-the-river hydro, makes the entire country vulnerable to weather patterns, especially the dry season. The resulting dependence on importing electricity, often from India during those dry months, creates a strategic vulnerability. And reliance on imported fossil fuels for backup generation or transport exposes the economy to volatile global energy prices.
Okay, I see. Energy dependence creates vulnerability.
Right. So a smart grid, combined with a diversified portfolio of Nepal's own renewable resources, maximizing hydro potential with better storage, aggressively developing solar, tapping into waste energy creates a much more sustainable and self-sufficient energy system. It reduces that import dependence, keeps energy spending within Nepal's economy, and ultimately, it's an investment in the country's long-term energy independence, economic sovereignty, and strategic stability.
It's really becoming clear now how all these pieces fit together. Smart electric transport reduces the load on energy, waste energy solves the disposal crisis and generates electricity, energy-efficient lighting and smart grids free up resources and create that reliable base needed for all the other innovations. It really highlights that synergy the sources talk about.
Exactly. That interconnectedness is the core idea. Smarter transport needs reliable energy. Reliable energy can be boosted by smarter waste management. It all links up. But, and this is a really crucial but emphasized in the materials, technology alone, the sensors, the algorithms, the smart meters, it's only a tool. It's an enabler. Even the most advanced systems will be useless or even counterproductive if the conditions for their implementation aren't right. The successful realization of this Kathmandu 2.0, this vision, hinges heavily on three critical non-technical factors.
Okay, so technology isn't enough. What are these three factors?
First, and maybe foremost, is sustained political will and consistency. It's not enough for leaders at the city and national level to just declare a commitment to innovation. They have to ensure policies are implemented consistently, reliably over the long term, beyond just short electoral cycles. They absolutely have to avoid repeating past mistakes where promising initiatives got started and then fizzled out or were reversed. That pattern just destroys public trust.
Consistency. Got it. What's number two?
Second is the smart use of strategic public-private partnerships, or PPPs. The sheer scale and investment needed for smart grids, BRTE plants, it clearly exceeds what the state budget alone can handle, especially in Nepal's context. So, attracting private capital, yes, but also private sector expertise, management skills, and efficiency through transparent, well-structured PPP models is pretty much essential. The state's critical role here is to create clear, stable, predictable rules of the game, fair contracts, reliable regulations that make long-term investments in Kathmandu's infrastructure genuinely attractive and secure for businesses.
Okay. Political will, effective PPPs. What's the third crucial element?
The third, and arguably the one that ties everything together, is genuine citizen engagement, with that framework called smart citizens. Ultimately, a city is its residents. The success or failure of any transformation project, especially one that touches daily life so profoundly, depends entirely on public acceptance and active participation. Every single step, whether it's convincing people to sort their waste correctly, or encouraging them to use a new Moz app for transport, or accepting road disruptions during BRT construction, it all requires public buy-in and cooperation.
And how do you get that buy-in, especially if there's skepticism?
It comes back to what we discussed earlier. Projects have to be visibly focused on people's needs from the start. The benefits save time, cleaner air, reliable power need to be obvious and clearly communicated. And the whole implementation process itself needs to be open, transparent, and inclusive, actively seeking feedback and addressing concerns. People need to feel like they are part of the solution, not just having solutions imposed on them.
That's a really powerful and practical roadmap for actually making this happen. Political will, smart partnerships, and putting citizens truly at the center. When you consider all of this, Kathmandu really does seem to have this unique, maybe once-in-a-generation opportunity. It's not just about playing catch-up with other cities. It feels like it could leapfrog and potentially set an example for sustainable urban development in the 21st century. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, maybe living far away from Kathmandu? Well, I think it's about seeing how complex real-world problems, even ones as seemingly chaotic as a major city in crisis, can actually be tackled. Tackled with a smart blend of technology, yes, but crucially, underpinned by that interconnected thinking and a determinedly people-first approach. And maybe it raises an important question for all of us. What's one area in your own life, or perhaps your own community, where you could apply this kind of interconnected thinking? Where could you look at related problems and try to find integrated solutions to turn a challenge into an opportunity? Something to think about. Okay, that's it for this deep dive into Kathmandu's potential smart city transformation. We really hope you've gained some valuable insights, maybe a few surprising facts today. Our goal, as always, is to give you that shortcut to being well-informed, a comprehensive understanding without the usual information overload. Until next time, keep digging deeper into the world around you.